Paul, you're now Batman. Isn't that exciting?
No, I'm Batman.
We're not talking leather again, are we?
Hey everybody, it's John Lamberton here alongside my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jason Brockman. We are here for another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, where as always, it is our job to help you get more customers and make more money without just working harder. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this month's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 59 of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast. Today we are going to be talking with a couple who chose sanity over their salary. But before that, I want to talk about books, because we're going to be talking a lot in today's episode about lots of different books. And I've probably read close to about 1,000 books now. Many personal development books, lots of business books. And I've narrowed those 1,000 books down to the best 80. Motivational, tactical, productivity, mindset, health, sales, and marketing, whatever you want to learn. I've narrowed my 1,000 plus reads down to just 80 books. I say just 80. It will probably take you a few months to work through them. But ultimately, whatever you want to learn, I believe the answer will lie in one or more of these 80 books. So if you want to get my top 80 books list, just head to bigidea.co.uk/books. I've been in the studio recording the audiobook for Routine Machine, so I'm getting very used to not popping my P's at the moment.
So we only said you could do one plug. That's two.
What do you mean? Comes out on the 5th of December. So today's guests are Paul and Emily Hughes from Parent Guide to GCSE. And Paul and Emily met in 2003 as trainee teachers assigned to the same school. It took a few years until they finally bonded over divorces and Emily's motorcycle leathers. Apparently that's a long but obvious story. Looking forward to drilling into that later, is what Paul said. No. And the rest, as they say, is history. They've been happily married for 11 years. And now that they've both escaped teaching, their words, not mine, they run the Parent Guide to GCSE, supporting parents whose children are in year 11. They made £11,000 in their launch week, so they must be doing something right. Emily has a master's from Cambridge in maths with education, while Paul has a master's in information management and computing from the University of Sheffield, which would have been very useful when we were getting technical, trying to get our equipment set up this afternoon. But we'll also probably tell you what each of them taught for the 15 years they were in teaching. Emily also runs a pop choir, I'm getting used to popping my P's, pop choir in her spare time, as she says she needs to be able to boss people around having left teaching. Paul says he thinks that's already covered at home, but frankly, we're not getting involved. Welcome to the AOB podcast, Paul and Emily. How you doing, guys?
Hello.
All good.
Oh, dear, welcome to the show. That was a great introduction. Thank you very much for writing it and not putting me off too much whilst I was reading it out. I got to say, I love the dynamic between you two guys, because you love to have fun. You don't take yourself too seriously. And
how do you know this?
Definitely.
Well, you do. You come across as people who are genuinely enjoying the journey of running your own business. Because you're fairly new to business, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of novices get scared absolutely shitless in their first year or so. And it's very much rabbit in headlights and, oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to make payroll? Am I going to be able to survive? Have I done the right thing? And you guys just seem to be loving the journey, loving the ride. Speaking of rides, we spent last week with Paul at Alton Towers.
We went on more than one ride.
We did.
Indeed.
Yeah.
No motorcycle leathers.
And I went on all of them. No fear, no fuss.
But I'm keen to know, how have you, or has that been hard for you guys to actually relax and trust that what you've learned and implemented is going to work?
The journey has kind of been oddly slow. So I kind of went part-time from a job, and I'd started various different streams of revenue, in theory at least, or attempts at streams of revenue, in order to try and be able to get out of the teaching job that was at the time making me thoroughly miserable. And so having gone part-time and taken that cut from, I was on the leadership spine, so I was up there in terms of earning potential for teachers, cut my hours back down to normal teacher and then cut down to part-time. So we kind of had stages to get used to the whole, oh my gosh, we don't have 2 full paychecks coming in. And we had to kind of to make that work. But we've, it's been fine. It's been, since that all started, a couple of years, and we've gradually just realised that whatever we've been doing, it's working. We're still paying the bills, we're still feeding the children, the lights are still on, and we can still afford to do the things that we want to do. And it's not been quite as scary as we thought. And so as this has kind of gone on, I'm now completely relaxed about it. I'm like, yeah, it'll all be fine. The money will come in. It's going to be okay. Paul is recently not salaried anymore. And
I was going to say, it's literally
that.
very short, hasn't it? The period that you've kind of like stepped away from education altogether.
It's been about 3 weeks, I
3
think,
weeks, yeah.
since you officially stopped teaching.
It's been the best 3 weeks ever. When Emily was working full time and not having a great time with teaching, but the discussion between us was when she said, I want to go part time, it wasn't a big debate about can we do this, can't you? It was like, just do it, write the letter, send it off. And then about 3 months later, can I give up teaching because I'm doing X, Y, and Z? Again, it wasn't a big sort of, let's get the balance sheet, the family finances out and work that. It's just, do it because, she's that clever. Whatever she does seems to work. So here we are.
Oh, that will be written now. It's been immortalised on the podcast that, she knows what she's doing. She's really clever and what she says works.
Well, she tells me that all the time, but I've now, I've committed to take it.
I'm glad we have you to come to realise that.
Yeah, it's a good job we've got a script here, isn't it? One thing I need to pick you up on, Paul. So we were at Alton Towers last week, and this may or may not work for audio listeners of this podcast, but Paul pointed out that, this business is going quite well. And there were air quotes around this business that Paul was describing. And I remember saying at the time, you have got a business. It is a business, and it does work, and it does exist. It's not a thing that you're playing at. And I know exactly.
I think that's something that Emily keeps picking me up on as well. She has this, confidence because she's been doing it for longer than I have. Having only been doing this for 3 weeks or being out of the sort of salary loop for 3 weeks, I just, I have more concerns about, making sure that the money's coming in, et cetera, et cetera. But what we are doing, the business we've created, or Emily created and I've joined into, is, I think, is fantastic.
Yes, I think he still feels slightly like he's on an extended holiday because he's doing work, but he's doing less than he was when he was teaching. So I think he still feels like this is some kind of dream and he's going to wake up and have to go back to school.
Can't quite believe his luck, really. It's like it's business thing. It's amazing.
Nice. I was spending Friday at Alton Towers. Yeah, I was working, obviously.
Yes.
Of course, it was networking. It was...
we got loads of ideas.
We did, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of queuing, wasn't there?
Lots of queuing. I learnt stuff. Quite a few laughs, it's fair to say. Bit of rudeness.
Yes.
Nothing to do with me.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's the other students, wasn't it? Oh, dear. Emily, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your dad. So I gather from what you were telling me before that he's been quite a big inspiration in the way you've designed your business. Because again, you've gone into this business very early on, very eyes open that it's going to be an ambitious lifestyle business.
Absolutely.
The lifestyle comes first. And I think a lot of that comes from your dad. Is that right?
Yeah, very much so. So Dad is a design engineer by trade, and I remember as a kid he'd be off working for various power tool companies and designing power showers, and he'd occasionally do work for some kind of chocolate company, and he'd go away for probably about a week, and he'd come back with a big wad of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 bars. Don't know if you remember those. They were good.
Oh, yeah.
And a block of chocolate that was about like 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches that we just chipped bits off. for about a year in the fridge. And I remember more that he came back with chocolate than that he was away for a while. But I know that when I was younger, he was working super, super hard for other people. And, you know, and we had a nice house and we were all fine, but it wasn't what he wanted to do. It wasn't his passion. And he is a keen guitarist, and he had a guitar capo that you put the thing on the neck of your guitar and strap it across the frets, and it changes the pitch. So if you want to sing a song that's a little bit higher and you want to play it the easy way, you put the guitar capo on and it helps. He had this hideous one that detuned his guitar every time he used it. And being a design engineer and a very clever man, he thought to himself, do you know what? I can do better with this. So he built a better guitar capo, which has been used by Eric Clapton. Bryan Adams uses them. Katie Tunstall shouts about them on social media. They are the bee's knees, because he's worked super hard to make them the best possible one that you can get. And now, having kind of gradually started that in our garage and then worked his way up to this, it's now a global business, which is run by him and my brother, who now does all the social media and artist relations, which sounds very fancy, and a couple of other people that help out with things. But it means he can work when he wants to. They have the grandchildren around and they hang out with them, and he takes naps. Pops naps, because he's Pops, and thinks that's the best thing ever, because he can do that. He's designed his business around it so that he can have the life that he wants, look after all of us as a family, and not be spending all of his time working for someone else. So the way that he's done that has made us think, well, that makes sense. That should be what we're aiming for. So we should really start that now. Let's not start with something where we're grafting constantly and hustling, and then figure out how to turn that into something where we get to actually have a life as well. Let's design it really, really intentionally from the beginning to be an ambitious lifestyle business. So that's kind of where it's all come from, really.
So what time is nap time for you guys?
Well, we do have Fridays. So Fridays we knock off at about 12:01, and then we have a bit of kind of quality time. We'll go out for lunch or something, and then when the Munchkin gets home from school, we get a bit of time with her, where it's not all about, oh, I've still got some work to do. It's very deliberately planned out, blocked off time, and that's been something we've not been able to do. When we were both teaching, she'd, you know when your child, you get the phone call from school and you're like, oh, are they ill? What's happened? No. We just wanted to let you know they're getting an award in the assembly on Friday. Can you come along? And as a teacher, that fills you with dread, because you've got to go to the boss and say, can I have that lesson off? And you can often get someone to cover it for you, or maybe you're even free. But if it's that first lesson, the pressure to get back to school for the next lesson, so you're not putting anyone else out or letting the kids down, is insane. So you're sat there with your child beaming at the front like, this is the best thing ever, I'm so proud of myself, and you're clock watching because you know they're dragging on and your child is last. Like, just need to move on because I've got to run out of the door in a minute, and then you're kind of sprinting back to the car park. It's no fun at all.
I mean, in a way there's more to it than that, because you get the phone call saying you got this award. You know that you're not going to be given the time. You go to your boss and say, can I have that hour to, well, you can do, but it's going to be unpaid, and only if you can get cover here, there and everywhere. There's lots of hoops you've got to jump through. And then you have to be back by 10 o'clock. And if you're not back by 10 o'clock, then, so again, the clock watching, you're watching all these kids who, the other children getting the award. It's like, get a move on. Where's my child? Where's my child? And it's not enjoyable. And that was a really kind of a kind of light bulb moment in a way, that we can't keep doing this. This is not a family, the way to go with your family.
It's not fair on her. So,
and here we are.
I love the fact that you guys have designed this from the absolute start. You've gone right in at the beginning and said, this is what we're going to do. These are the rules. Because so many people would just say, it's all about the money. What was my salary? But I need to replace this. And the only way I can do this is by working really hard and going all in above anyone else. And I think the fact that you guys have come from a teaching background where, for those who don't know, I'm married to a teacher who went part-time a couple of years ago. So she now only works 70 hours a week. She's not paid for 70 hours a week, of course. But that's classed as a part-time teacher now. But actually, let's say it is, for anyone who's in employment at the moment and looking to start their own business, or has that call and says, look, your daughter's at the special assembly, we're getting the award on Friday, can you go? For the majority of people who are in employment, that's a hard thing because you have to get permission from your boss, etc. But in teaching as well, it's regimented. You can't say, oh yeah, of course you can, because you can catch up at the weekend, or just do that work, at 6 a.m. before you slope off, or work from home to cover it. You can't do that because the kids are sat there thinking, where's Mr. Hughes? He was meant to be here. Meant to be teaching me how to reboot my computer or whatever it is you taught him.
Yeah.
Have I oversimplified
Exactly
that?
what it is. No, you're on the money.
That's where the computer switch on in the first place, which in a school is, about 50-50. Yeah.
It's not true though, because the times that I've needed to have that 1 hour off, I haven't been teaching. I would have had a free lesson anyway, but they still won't let you go without making a massive fuss over it. So that's
largely down to where you work. There are schools that I think take much better care of their teachers than the schools that we have been in more recently. And it's often down to an individual department head. That one person that is your boss can make or break whether you enjoy your job or whether it is a soul-sucking nightmare of a day.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for any boss, isn't it? And any job. So ultimately, the decision whether you can go to the special assembly or the sports day, or to go to your sister's wedding or whatever, is will the shackles reach?
Yeah, true story.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about leaving teaching, because this is I was doing a little bit of Google research yesterday, and it's a huge number of people who are contemplating leaving teaching. They're thinking about quitting teaching. They want to know how to do it. They want to know what is the path. So from those that have trodden the path, and as I said, I'm married to a teacher who is on that path, maybe not as far along the path as I'd like her to be, but who is ultimately on that path. What is the consideration? Let's go right back to the beginning, where you first had those seeds of, could we leave, or could one of you leave? Could you go part-time? Could we start a business? What was your mindset and your self-talk around that time?
I know when I was looking to get out, I did an awful lot of sitting and looking through various job sites and going, could I do that? Could I do that? And as a teacher, you have a really broad skill set in terms of training, in terms of the amount of work you're able to put in and the amount of preparation you're able to do. There's loads that you could. I mean, if you can sell algebra to teenagers, you can sell anything to anyone outside. So,
that is the new note.
Yeah, it's really useful.
Algebra to teenagers.
We'll use it all the time, really. But I'm looking through all these jobs, and it's either kind of something that looks terrifyingly senior, and I'm thinking, well, I don't have the experience in that sector to jump in. I don't think I could do that. Or I have to go really, really junior, which would be incredibly frustrating at having worked my way up to where I was in teaching, to then have to go back to being at the bottom of the ladder. And it would have made obviously a huge difference in salary. So looking at swapping jobs wasn't ever really going to be a goer. It didn't appeal at all. And so I'd almost given up on the idea and kind of resigned myself to being stuck in teaching until I was, I don't know, about 83, given the amount of times the government keep moving the goalposts. And then mum and dad knew that I was thoroughly miserable, and they read something in the paper. There was a woman who had a Fulfilled by Amazon business. So she'd set up this business, she'd designed her, I think it was some kind of beauty product, vitamins or something, and she'd sent them all off to the Amazon warehouse, done all the listings, and then done a bit of promoting it and so on. But Amazon then do all the logistics. And I was thinking, oh, actually I could do that, because I could do that alongside, because my first little foray into the business world was classroom posters. So I designed some for my classroom. Other teachers had said, wow, I love that. Can you do me one for my classroom? And it sort of started, then the school said, oh, could you do them for the whole school? Can we have the things so we can print them? And I thought, that could work actually. And they're still
available on Amazon.
Yes, still available on Amazon. Search for Nerd Me Up. All you maths teachers out there. And that was something that I could do kind of on the side, a little side hustle that would start me off on the right track. And if I could build it up, then it would maybe be something that would let me escape.
And you're still part-time, I think, at that stage. So it was,
I think that was even pre-part-time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then my sister runs the original pop choir over in York that I now run a sort of franchise of within Peterborough. And she suggested that I started up my own to be a little bit of an extra side hustle. So again, I'm just at this point building up the different revenue streams to go, could this be something? Because with choir, I love to sing anyway. I'm just standing up and teaching. I'm quite good at being fun and engaging, because if you can't do that as a maths teacher, you're going to really struggle on a daily basis. So, so that's what I do every week. And actually, it's like 3 hours of therapy for me every week. I love it. And it brings in more in terms of income, or has done over the last couple of years, than anything else we've tried. So it's just been chipping away at little things, coming up with ideas and thinking outside the box. That was the biggest leap, was not just thinking, I want to quit teaching, I need a different job, but thinking, I want to quit teaching, here are the skills that I've got, how can I use those creatively? And when the universe then chucks you a little nudge in the right direction, going, I'm going to try that, and running with it. And it's all just kind of fallen into place, hasn't it, really?
I think we're lucky because there's two of us, obviously both teachers formally, and I just kept working. I was the salary, I was the guaranteed money.
I'm sorry.
I know. And I was okay with that, because I wasn't in the dark place at the time that Emily was in terms of teaching. So I kind of almost gave her the freedom to be able to do that, because we knew that bills were still going to be paid and all that kind of essential family stuff. Gave her time to and space to be creative, and that's kind of brought us to where we are now, really.
Yeah.
So you were the safety net.
Yeah, and then I could bully him into leaving, because it was all starting to snowball nicely.
I didn't need much bullying.
You didn't.
Not a lot of arm twisting.
I had enough of that in work, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was just the students.
I was watching the Wolf of Wall Street the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other day. I remember 2 days ago, in fact, and it was kind of the only regret you're going to have is not doing it sooner. And do you think that's a regret you might have had, or you may be having? I know it's only been 3 weeks, but now you've seen what it's about and dabbled for that.
I think the age of the children, where the children are at, I think probably it's been about perfect timing. I'd love to have escaped earlier, but I just don't think. Money's not everything, but certain things had to be paid, and that it was the right. I think it was the right time, the right decision, because I did one day a week for the first part of the September term, as it were.
Yeah, just to interrupt here for a moment, it's because he wussed out. So at the end of the summer, I said to him, quit, come and work with me. And he kind of did but what if, what if we need the money, and just one day a week, and got then talked into it by school.
I some people, colleagues at school were like, well, what are we going to do if you're not here? You're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then a certain class were like, well, but we haven't finished our coursework and there's nobody else to replace you. Can you just stay on a bit longer? And I was like, well, I suppose a day a week, just for 6 weeks. It seemed like not a big deal at the time, but
is there a lot of guilt there that's kind of or put on pressure on you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should have just said, no, it's a decision that I've made. I need to move on. Most people, when you leave a job, you don't look behind and think, I should have stayed a little bit longer, and I should have cut the ties and gone in August. But
I know somebody else having the same thing. It's like, actually, I'm down to 2 days a week, but perhaps I'll just do 1 day a week, or perhaps I'll just do that. And I'll just see this year through. I'll just see this class through. I want to just see how these children, just before you realise you're in a second year and a third year, and
I'm very good at making excuses and not making a decision, and so I'm glad I got quite severely bullied by my wife.
That's escalated over the last 2 minutes there, hasn't it? Didn't require much bullying to severe bullying now.
Talk about that for a minute, should we? No, okay.
Was that a question? I missed
Yeah.
it.
What does the bullying need to be? Because John could take some lessons, is what I'm thinking.
We were doing our best on the coaching call to convince her that she needs to do it. There's a lot to be said for getting rid of the safety net, because when you get rid of the safety net, you've got, it's do or die. There's no hedging, and there's no kind of splitting your brain, because Paul, I know for the last 6 weeks or so, when he was working 1 day a week, his head was in school more than that 1 day a week, and it was taking his focus away from what he should have been concentrating on, because it's what we're working towards. So she needs to do it. I'm just putting in another little marker there.
It's
Advice from
Well,
teachers.
she's kind of done it, but not
Yeah.
done it.
exactly. I'm going to force her to listen. I'm going to bully her into listening to this episode. So but it's interesting, because obviously here I am now, nearly 2 decades into running my own businesses, and everything you say about removing the safety net, I know is true. I've seen so many examples of this, and could tell you examples from my own life. And it's like, there was a guy the other day, and it was I might have talked this on a coaching call, the trapeze artist, and his sister fell off the high wire and broke her neck quite seriously. I think she was out for like 6 months. And as a result of this accident, they used the safety net. They always had the safety net, but they never used it. And all of a sudden they had this safety net. And the minute the safety net went up, he kept falling off. And every time he would get up on the high wire, he'd fall. And he never fell before, but all of a sudden, and he said, oh, actually, the reason I'm falling is because of the safety net, because normally I would be ultra focused that I have to get this right. And I would do the necessary work, and I would make absolutely sure that everything is spot on. When the safety net's there, I just kind of get on the rope and try and wing it and go a bit faster than I should, and maybe don't get the balance right. I don't give the scenario the serious consideration that I should do, because I've got that safety net. And I mean, there's a very good example. I think it's one of the Batman films. Bruce Wayne is like buried in a cave somewhere, this massive deep cavern, and it's like a prison. And if you escape, you're free to leave. And they give you a rope. And basically, it's almost an impossible climb. No one's ever done it, or that one person did it once. And at some point, Bruce Wayne then has this hallucination after several failed attempts. And the hallucination says to him, you must lose the rope. Forget the rope. And so the only way he can possibly escape from this hellhole is to climb out without a rope, knowing that if he falls, he's dead. And that's the only way he could possibly get out, because that's how he devotes the serious effort and focus required to the situation, is by knowing, if I fall, this is game over, rather than, I'm going to keep 1 foot in and I'm going to be 2 days a week, 1 day a week, because you'll be sat there going, what if this doesn't work? Well, what if it does work?
Yeah.
Paul, you're now Batman. Isn't that exciting?
No, I'm back.
We're not talking leather again, are
Not
we? It's who wears the leather trousers in this house?
Catwoman wears leather trousers. I've seen Catwoman in her leather trousers.
With the 1 day a week, it was on a Tuesday, and so on the Monday I'd be doing my job, and but I had and clients I had to look after, and way more important than schoolwork. So it got to the sort of late Monday night, and I was thinking I'm just gonna have to let people down tomorrow. But instead of doing that, I pulled a sickie, and unashamedly, because as a teacher, because I was on 0 hours, if I don't turn up, I don't get paid, so nobody's losing out necessarily. But I just made that decision to sort of take that day off school to make sure I stayed here and got on with the job that I was now doing, which it got to the point where it was becoming a burden. I needed to cut the safety net.
Which proves that who was right, dear?
It was either you or you're right.
Let me just check the script. Hang on.
I think it could have been me. It could have been me. Or
Yes, dear.
It could have been, yeah. I mean,
It could have been you, but you left it too late.
I mean, obviously, I'm dishing out advice here about removing safety nets and climbing up things without a rope, and just take away that safety net. This is the guy who, again, as a civil servant, I went part-time first, And then only once I had 6 months' wages in the bank did I quit. So I had that safety net. So I can preach and, you know, do what I say, not what I do. That's the lesson from this. Cool. Let's staying on the education theme. Let's talk about the importance of education as a business owner. So you mentioned before that you've read a ton of business books.
Yes.
So where did this love of business books and non-fiction come from?
I can't remember what would have been first. I think
Ideas for
way
Small
back
Businesses.
when I think I did a 4-hour work week. I think I tried that one. And
That's
I thought,
great fun for a teacher to read the 4-hour work week. So you had a VA doing all the teaching for you. Yeah, you just, you know, I'm going to check my lesson plans once a week on a Monday. And if it's not there, then you're going to wait a week.
oh, that would be so lovely. No, I love reading anyway. And I have always enjoyed learning new things. I've always dabbled in stuff. So as a teacher, I made my own website and coded some maths games to entertain the kids as starters and things to make life slightly easier. So I like to learn new stuff. So whenever I see a recommendation, so I've been on your list of books and I've gone through and I'm like, yep, read that. Ooh, that's going on the list. And whenever I see a recommendation, I'm thinking I should read that. I've got, I think, 227 business books on my Kindle at the moment, or that I've kind of worked my way through. And there are some that I go back to on a regular basis. Things like Oversubscribed gets read a lot. Your books getting read a lot. We're liking those. I'm making him do Big Ideas for Small Businesses now, because you haven't read that one, had you?
No.
Yet.
Shame. Halfway through.
He's getting there. And what's the other one? And Jen Sincero, I love her stuff. You're a badass, and you're a badass at making money. In terms of the mindset shift, specifically for women in business, because I think we talk to ourselves differently than you do. I assume, never having been a bloke, I'm not certain, but you know, her books speak to me in a kind of, you know, very visceral, seriously, you're a badass. Stop pretending you're not. Just do the thing. Eat the frog.
Yeah.
You know, and all of the books that I'd read have been kind of absorbing, like a little sponge, like a little SpongeBob almost. And then it got to the point where we were designing this business, and I just found myself going, oh, we're going to steal this idea from here. We're going to make sure we build in this from here. And I'm going to take this from here. And if I hadn't had that ongoing education all the way up to that point, I don't think it would be what it is today. And I don't think it would have worked anywhere near as well as it has done, because it really has been a kind of mishmash of lots of really different but really good ideas from different people.
Well, we were listening to the Oversubscribed podcast on the way back from where we just been.
Audible, yeah.
And just sitting there making notes. I was driving, Emily was sitting there making notes, even though she's read it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Well, a few
Not
times. And she's still sitting there scribbling notes, things that she hadn't picked up on, things that we need to do, so 2 hours later, she's got this plan.
Whenever you read something, you've gained, I don't know, 2-3 months worth of life experience and business experience in the meantime. So stuff that didn't spark something the last time you read it, now you might have an application for it. So you've got to keep those things in mind, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. One of my go-to books, I think it might have been the first kind of personal development book that I read, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that is the book I always quote. I think I've reread it 8 times now. But every time I've read that book, I've interpreted it differently. I've got something else out of it. As you said, I've spotted something that was never there before. No, it was there before. The words have not changed on that book. I've picked up the same copy of the same book every time. But the person who first picked up that book in kind of 2001 was just starting a business, who, as you'll read in Big Ideas for Small Businesses, Paul, didn't feel that it was a real business, and stated to the Plymouth Evening Herald in 2001 that I'd like to own a real business one day.
It was just that business thing.
It was. But that was, I read that book then. So that was a real novice business owner who was really still a civil servant who thought he was playing at running a business. Fast forward, 10 years, and all of a sudden I've been running kind of 30 online businesses. I'm in a very different place. focused. Now, you know, I've got 2 decades of experience, and I'm now, you know, I could probably quote you most of that book, but I guarantee if I was to reread that book, and it's been a couple of years since I have reread it, guarantee if I pick that book up this weekend, it will spark something in me, and I will take some action as a result.
Yeah. And that's the important bit, is that taking action as a result. It's all very well reading and absorbing all the different ideas and thinking, oh, that's nice. That'd be a really good idea. But if you don't then apply it in some way, then it doesn't actually do you any good. So I'm starting debriefing books in a Lamo fashion.
Yeah.
As I've read them,
and it was Elaine who was saying that, Elaine Collier, wasn't it? It was talking about debriefing and making notes.
Making either a mind map. I've just discovered, I think it was Dean, who suggested, but Workflowy, which is a really good note-taking app kind of thing, and actually you can just write it down in your chapters and everything like that, and just, it comes up with a one-page wonder kind of thing at the end of it. Much the same as a mind map, I guess, depending on how you kind of read and how you kind of process it. But again, you've got it in that one sheet of paper, which is nice and easy to determine what it is. So key quotes, key takeaways, whatever you kind of want. Great plan.
I mean, it's one of the things, again, this has come from a book. So this has come from Charlie Munger's, what's it called? It's that big book over there, Almanac. Yeah, Poor Charlie's Almanac, that's it. And he talks about taking ideas from different disciplines and just applying them elsewhere. So this is all about digesting those 264 books on your Kindle and taking an idea from this and an idea from that and saying, well, what if I applied that to this thing over here? And, you know, with the book debriefs, now it started off as just literally, I wanted to make my notes. And then it started with, I'll take my highlights. And then I think we had the podcast with Elaine Collier, which I'm not going to even guess what number that was, but it was
very good.
50 something. We'll look that up for the show notes. But yeah,
said it was awesome.
Listen back to the mind mapping podcast with Elaine Collier, because Elaine talked about how to remember things, how to make things move from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And this is something I've played with over the years. Kind of, okay, so I've got books over there that I've got highlights in. So now I make sure I'm rereading just the highlights. And I aim to kind of, because I remember Elaine told us that to remember something, you recall it after 10 minutes, then it was a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year, I think. So I'm trying to now make sure I stick to that schedule with my go-to books. I can't do that with all my books because there isn't enough hours in the day, but there are certain books that if I review them once a month or once a quarter, or even for some that I know very well once a year, I reaffirm that learning. And I picked something else up the other day, which was about recall, how we remember things. It's better to use recall than it is to review. So this was talking about study, and this may be something you guys have come across before with Parent Guide to GCSE, is that rather than cramming your revision in the night before and rereading, you're better off reading it once, putting it down, then finding out what you can remember. And I've got a real life example of this from last weekend. So I, actually by the time this came out, I will have completed my first boxing match. At the end of this month, I'm going to be stepping in the ring. 2 weeks tomorrow, I was stepping in the ring. So I've been doing a bit of training, a bit of sparring, and I had an extra session with Tom Bowden, who was on an earlier podcast for 360 Mortgages. And Tom showed me a lot of different things that basically I was doing wrong that will result in me either wasting my energy completely or getting punched in the face. And this was, an hour-long session with Tom, and he told me,
paid him not to do that
about
session.
12 different things. And what I needed to do then was actually come home and try and recall all those things. So I wrote down all the things he told me, but I did that an hour later. So I very deliberately waited, sat there an hour later and recalled. And all of a sudden now I can recall what those things are. It was pivoting. It was actually jabbing I am jabbing the stomach when I should be hooking, and using a double jab. And it was pivoting the hips in Power Comes to Hips. Lots of different things, but that now comes easier to mind because I used recall rather than reviewing. And I'm trying to do that with books now. I'm trying to, for example, I'll listen to a Blinkist. So I'll listen to a summary of a book, 20-minute summary of a book. And then rather than just kind of going back over that or looking at the written highlights, I will try and write down what the 6 key takeaways were from that last 20 minutes that I listened to. And for those listening to the podcast today, that could be something that you implement now, is you listen to this podcast today. Before you go on to the next podcast on your playlist, just hit pause, grab a piece of paper, grab your phone, and just write down 3 things that you remember from this episode. 3, it could be a quote, it could be an action point, it could be a book that you need to read that we've recommended, but 3 things that you remember from this episode. Don't write it down at the time. Wait until the end of the episode and then do it. Are you guys aware of any, obviously you've done GCSE revision, are you guys aware of any kind of science or anything behind this?
No, just I think I've been talking recently with our members about how if your child is just kind of reading through their notes, then it gets very easy to get to the point where you're feeling like it's familiar because you're reading through your notes that you wrote. And so it's all starting to feel like, oh yeah, I know this. I recognize all of this. This is fine. I remember this because you're reading the same thing over and over. Whereas if you covered up your notes and asked someone else to ask you questions about it or tried to write a short summary, that it just goes entirely out of the window because it's not, you don't have your little prompts in front of you where your brain's going, oh yeah, I know that. That's familiar. And it's something that students are really bad at. They tend to want to reread their notes as their revision because it's comfortable and it's easy and it doesn't make them feel stupid because they're rereading their notes. They're not being tested on anything. And that's why a lot of them get to the exam and they can't remember what they're supposed to be talking about because they don't have the prompts in front of them. So it's not really science behind it, but it's something that a lot of parents are saying to us is, my child doesn't know how to revise. You know, what should we be asking them to do? Because schools give a lot of advice to kids, and you know how communicative teenagers can be. So
there's a letter in my bag somewhere. Yeah.
But as parents, if your child doesn't tell you this stuff, you've got no way of knowing. It's all out there on the internet somewhere, but there's also a lot of bad advice out there. So what we're trying to do is combine all the good advice using our teaching experience and our parenting experience, because we have 17-year-olds and an almost 11-year-old. By the time this comes out, she will be 11, which is terrifying. And it makes me feel quite old. But we're taking what we know and putting it into kind of practical, parent-friendly advice, because as human beings, we're terrible at learning new stuff and remembering stuff. Yeah. It's not just teenagers because they're teenagers. It's advice that everyone listening is going, oh, that's a good idea, John. I should do that. I should go back at the end of this podcast and write some stuff down, because it's not something we train ourselves to do, because we don't have to.
They don't get told how to use them either. So here's a whole load of tools you can use to help with your revision. So do your cue cards, do your revision cards. You've got your mind maps. You've got your this and that, whatever. Find something that works for you and go with it. But they don't really kind of process which is the thing that will work for them and how that then can be used to do the revision and then kind of crack on. So you end up with, here's your notes, read through them. Yeah, I've done a load of reading today, so I'm off to my exam. And like you kind of said, that doesn't work and you just don't get in, but they don't get those practical guide to actually, here's what you've got, this is how you use it, sort of thing.
It's the old, again, it's pulling an idea from Ray Dalio now, billionaire hedge fund manager, the idea meritocracy, that you can learn everything, but not everything has equal value. There are certain things you need to remember that are more important to remember than others. So have you structured that hierarchy? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk headspace, mental issues, because I know we've touched on this a few times about the mindset shift that's happened. How has your mental health and your mindset changed over these last 2 to 3 years?
Well, I'm coming from a history of, I had a couple of bad bosses in a row, and I'd gone. Names. Yes, I shan't name names. I went from the point where my line manager was someone who had previously been in my job and who trusted me and valued my input and talked to me as an equal and helped me really understand what was going on. And then she left. And my next line manager was not so lovely. And I just felt, about this big on a daily basis. And it, along with all the pressure of the job, caused me to be thoroughly miserable. And it got to the point where I was driving to school every day in tears and just not seeing a way out. And we kind of, I think we had a Christmas break, didn't we? And it got to the point, normally as teachers, you get to 2-3 days before you're going to go back at the end of a holiday and the dread starts to sink in. You have the pre-work nightmares where you get put in front of a class and told to teach something that isn't your subject, or you're suddenly in charge of a school trip to somewhere really random and all the kids are running amok and you can't do anything about it. But for me, this was a whole new thing. There was still a week and a half to go of the Christmas holidays and I was dreading it.
But you're getting emails from this person saying 27th, 28th of December, so you're still full holiday mode, but you're reading your work emails and it's saying, I want this on my desk, I need X, Y, Z, and it needs to be presented like this, that, and the other. And you showed me, and you just clearly couldn't deal with it. And I think that was a very short conversation. Don't go back. You're being bullied, and it's kind of gone on from there. So
I got myself signed off with stress, which as a teacher is a pretty big deal. It's, I'm sure, in every aspect of different work life, but as a teacher, that's very much admitting defeat. And it sounds like the kids have beaten you when it's really not that at all. And because I'd stopped trying to cope, my brain kind of went, oh, thank goodness we can stop trying to cope. And I completely lost the plot. And I ended up off for about 3 months with depression. I couldn't get off the sofa. I was fairly useless, I think. I'm very sorry. I'm glad I'm back now.
The script here, Paul, says, no, you weren't. You were absolutely fine.
No, she didn't.
No. Bless him. I'm very lucky that you put up with all of that. And
no, go on. Let's talk more about that. Talk more about how amazing they are.
I'm so lucky.
They can keep going. It's fine. Don't edit.
So I got better and I got another job and I went back in and I'd gone for the head of department job against this other person and she'd got the job, and I'd then gone for a lead practitioner job, which is in most places, a slight step above. It's at least parallel with head of department. But she was not keen on working with a strong woman. And so nothing I did was good enough, nothing at all. And it got to the point where I'd applied for a secondment to the SLP and the head was stunned. Just, you could see it in his face, totally surprised, actually admitted, really surprised that you've gone for this, because he'd not, all the things that I'd been doing in the department, all the difference that I'd been making had either been ignored, talked down, or taken credit for in some cases by this boss who I just couldn't cope with anymore. And I could feel myself starting to wobble. I could feel myself starting to go back down that little kind of dark slide that ends in misery. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. So I quit. I did the right thing. I went and talked to the boss, and they said, "Oh, we've got to back the horse we bet on. I'm sorry, we've got to run with what she says." So I quit without a job to go to, which again, as a teacher, is a fairly big deal.
Yeah.
And that was really
Your
the beginning of the end.
Really supportive.
He is, yeah, and modest as well, yeah.
Again, you whipped away that safety net, but
Yeah.
as you alluded, you chose your sanity over the salary.
Yeah, and so since then, I've been very aware of the fact that depression is like, I think it's like, you dislocate your knee, it's always that much easier to dislocate again in future because everything's got a little bit stretched out of place. Depression is like that. Once you've had an episode, you're more likely to have another episode, and so on and so on. And I'm not going back there, not ever again, which means I'm not going back to being employed ever again, because I'm not running that risk, because you can't control your boss. Whatever happens, you can't. You can go into a job having met the boss and think they're really lovely and wonderful, and then 5 minutes down the line, they're gone and somebody else is in place, and you're at the mercy of someone else. So this is going to work. It has to work.
It's an ambitious lifestyle business.
Indeed. So mindset-wise, it's been a case of being determined, and I have had I think fairly unshakable confidence from the beginning that this was going to work, because between us, we are hardworking and driven enough. We are smart enough. We are, I think, humble enough to know that we don't know everything, And we need to surround ourselves with smart people who have been there and done this and learn from them, which is one of the many reasons we joined the 1% Club, because it makes such a difference to have a group of like-minded people to talk to and say, look, we're thinking of doing this. And they'll go, oh, no, don't do it like that. I've tried that. Do it like this. Have you thought about trying this? And
we've made mistakes along the way. I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. And we're learning from them. So
yeah, but that confidence, that belief that it's going to end up being a business that will not only support us in a sort of carrying on as we were when we were teaching, but we'll go further than that. That has meant it's not been quite as scary to press go on those things. So I did a copywriting course because I was trying to write weekly emails and content and thinking and kind of dreading it because I didn't think I was very good at it, and I probably wasn't. And there was a copywriting free webinar. You know how it goes. You do the free webinar and then they talk you into the product afterwards.
Yeah, big
And I
pitch at
was
the
like,
end.
yeah, I'm going to do the webinar. It'll be fine. And then she sent this series of emails. And by the end of it, I was going, no, I need to find £650. I need to get on this course. And then I thought, hang on a minute. If she can do that in a series of emails, she is the person I need to learn this from.
Yeah.
And I did it. And it was terrifying because that was money we didn't have in the business at the time. But because I know this is going to work, that's something that isn't negotiable. I've got to learn it because what am I going to pay someone else to do that forever and ever? No, I've got to get better at it. So it's the mindset there has always just been do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm reading good books to encourage me to do that kind of stuff. I'm working on my money mindset at the moment, so I'm reading Rob Moore's Money.
God, that's a big book, isn't it?
Yes.
that's exactly what Emily said. Yes.
I said to Paul, I'll do a summary. It's okay. You don't need to read this one.
Yeah. Money mindset, I can
go
recommend Ramit Sethi. Very spammy title. I will make you rich. I would teach you to be rich. That's it.
Okay.
That's a good one. Also, Tony Robbins' Unshakable is a good one.
Okay. I shall pop that on the list as well.
Go just to add, got 266 books to get through.
Yeah. Good, I don't want to run out.
No, I don't think there's any chance of that happening.
Nope. I think if I run out, I'll just write my own. I'll be at that point.
Well, definitely.
Can't be that hard, right?
So you left teaching.
So there we are, another episode in the can. How was it for you? Please let us know. However you listen to these podcasts, please leave a review on that platform. Let us know what we can do better, what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve to make this show even better for you. We'll see you next time.
And mapped all out to make sure I could do it, and it wasn't as massive as when very deliberately made it. 3 months between the idea and launch.